A development team uses shared S3 buckets to upload files. Due to this shared access, objects in S3 buckets have different owners, making it difficult to manage the objects. As a developer associate, which of the following would you suggest to automatically make the S3 bucket owner also the owner of all objects in the bucket, irrespective of the AWS account used for uploading the objects? Use S3 Access Analyzer to identify the owners of all objects and change the ownership to the bucket owner. Use bucket ACLs to control access on S3 bucket and then define its owner. Use S3 object ownership to default bucket owner to be the owner of all objects in the bucket. Use S3 cores to make the S3 bucket owner the owner of all objects in the bucket. Okay, the answer is use S3 object ownership to default bucket owner to be the owner of all objects in the bucket. Okay, let's go. A new member of your team is working on creating dead letter queue for Lambda function. As a developer associate, can you help him identify the use cases wherein Lambda will add a message into a DL queue after being processed? Select two. The event has been processed successfully. The Lambda function invocation failed only once, but succeeded thereafter. The event fails all processing attempts. The Lambda function invocation is synchronous. The Lambda function invocation is asynchronous. Okay, so the two are the event fails all processing attempts. The Lambda function invocation is asynchronous. Okay, when an asynchronous invocation event exceeds the maximum age or fails all retry attempts, Lambda discards it or sends it to dead letter queue if you have configured one. Okay, so sometimes obviously an asynchronous invocation can fail, and then you can set a dead letter queue. There we go. A junior developer working on ECS instances terminated a container instance in ECS as per instructions from the team lead, but the container instance continues to appear as a resource in the ECS cluster. Which of the following solutions would you recommend to fix this behavior? A custom software on the container instance could have failed and resulted in the container hanging in an unhealthy state till restarted again. The container instance has been terminated with AWS CLI, whereas for ECS instances, ECS CLI should be used to avoid any synchronization issues. You terminated the container instance while it was in stopped state that led to the synchronization issues. All right, you terminated the container instance while it was in running state that led to this synchronization issues. Okay. If you terminate a container instance while it is in the stop state, that container instance isn't automatically removed from the cluster. You will need to deregister your container instance in the stop state by using the ECS console. Once deregistered, the container instance will no longer appear as a resource. Okay. Yeah. You have a 3-tier web application consisting of a web layer using AngularJS, an application layer using API gateway, and a data layer in an RDS database. Your web application allows visitors to look up popular movies from the past. The company is looking at reducing the number of calls made to endpoint and improve latency to the API. What can you do to improve performance? Use mapping templates, use stage variables, use Amazon Kinesis data streams to stream incoming data. Oh, shit. And reduce the burden on gateway APIs. Enable API gateway caching. Enable API gateway caching to caching. Yeah, makes sense. An IT company has migrated to a serverless application stack on the AWS cloud with the compute layer being implemented via Lambda functions. The engineering managers would like to actively troubleshoot any failures in the Lambda functions. As a developer associate, which of the following solutions would you suggest for this use case? The developer should insert logging statements in the Lambda functions code, which are then available via CloudWatch logs. Use CloudWatch events to identify and notify any failures in the Lambda code. Use code commit to identify and notify any failures in the Lambda code. Use code deploy to identify and notify any failures in the Lambda code. The developer should insert logging statements in the Lambda function code, which are then available via CloudWatch logs. Okay, one more. An application runs on an EC2 instance and processes orders on a nightly basis. This EC2 instance needs to access the orders that are stored in S3. How would you recommend this EC2 instance access the orders securely? Create an IAM programmatic user and store the access key and secret access key on the EC2 AWS credentials file. Create an S3 bucket policy that authorizes public access. Use an IAM role or use EC2 user data. Use an IAM role. Oh. All right, we're going to stop now.